Welcome everyone to our monthly E3 Parent Summit. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Anna Aguilar, and I am one of 3 family liaisons, along with Carrie Sipka and Shannon Eves, here to support our families and staff at the Blue Ridge Academy. The purpose of our E3 Parent Summits is to engage our families and equip them with practical resources that they can use and empower them to succeed on their journey in independent learning with the Blue Ridge Academy. For today's E3 Parent Summit, we will share valuable insight on how to effectively prepare your family for home emergencies. We've invited special guests to give us tips on equipping our children for different types of emergency scenarios. Please take note that this session will be recorded for future viewing on our Blue Ridge Academy Parent Information Center, along with all of our other previously recorded sessions, and you're welcome to view them at a later time. To help make our sessions run smoothly, we have a couple of requests that we'd like to share with you to begin this presentation. If you can, please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off during the presentation. The chat box is available to enter any questions or comments you might have, which will not be answered until after the presentation during our Q&A time near the end. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce our first presenter and homeschooling parent with the Blue Ridge Academy, Kim Gomez. And prior to her speaking, we're going to watch this amazing video, and she'll be able to share more information about her experience with this very same safety at home. Let me unmute.
And trust us when we say this, this might just be the best story you'll hear all day. NBC4's photojournalist Sean Brownie brings us this story.
I love her. Yeah, I love her so much.
On Saturday evening, January 28, 2023, 6-year-old Fabian Gomez was alone with his mom, Kim.
My mommy was very sick, very.
I had a pretty bad stomach virus.
Following a call with urgent care nurse, she went on to experience hours of severe vomiting, unable to keep any liquids down.
You know, he saw me and he's like, "Mommy, you look really sick." And I said, "Mommy, it doesn't feel good. And I'm gonna have to call the paramedics, but we need to get ready for them." So he got dressed. I had every intention to call the paramedics for myself.
So together they made it to the front door where she instructed him to call 911, and then Kim passed out.
And she fell down on the floor and she wouldn't wake up. I called 911 and I gave them the name of our street and address, and I gave them clues of our house. And before the paramedics got there, I held them mommy's hand.
Not only was Fabian our hero, but also his mom and his Nana for teaching him how to dial 911 when there is a medical emergency.
I don't care about being a hero, I just care about people.
He did exactly how I taught him. And who knows, if he had not called and I wasn't breathing, it might have been too late. For all intents and purposes, he saved my life.
Thank you for that. I'm happy to introduce to you Mom, Blue Ridge Mom, and Mom Extraordinaire with a brave young man. This is Kim Gomez, excuse me.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I am a brand new homeschool mom to the homeschooling community. I am a former emergency ambulance dispatcher. And I have experience in EMS with about 20 years of experience behind me. Starting off, one of the reasons that I wanted to teach Fabian about 911 is I wanted to empower him, especially in the case of him being home alone with my mom, or just knowing where he's at. I wanted to give him the tools that he could use if an emergency came up, and I wanted him to know what to do in an emergency. We, as parents, as smart as our kids are, kind of assume that our kids know what to do, but we haven't really taught them. So what I started to do with Fabian when he was about 3 is I actually started teaching him his address. I taught him the concept of what's called big streets and little streets. Big streets are what people drive on, and little streets are what people live on. And we were able to incorporate our home address. Your kids knowing the home address is one of the most important things that you can teach your children when they call 911. They need to know where they're at. They need to know the address. Teach them their phone numbers. Please teach them the full names of their trusted adults. They need to know the city that they live in. All of these things are very, very important, and we take for granted that we assume kids know them, but they don't. So when you're teaching your littles, you want to make it fun. When I started teaching Fabian, he was 3 years old, so it was before he knew his numbers. I taught him the actual pattern. I showed him the pattern of 911 on the phone, and we would work from there. Then what I would do is we would play dispatcher. We would role play. And once he started to get better at recognizing and repeating the address, I would give him a scenario, and I would tell him, let's pretend that Nana is in the backyard and she slipped and fell. And we would go from there. So he would call 911, and I would answer it just like a dispatcher would. And we would do that on a continual basis. I also have started teaching him about situational awareness. This is getting your kids comfortable with knowing where they're at. They're not just going to the store, they're going to Target, they're going to Stater Brothers, they're going to Ralph's, they're going to Whittier Village Cinema. You want to get them knowing where their environment is to be able to relay that information if something happens outside of the home. You want to make sure that they are able to describe their house and their living situation. Have them include their apartment number, mobile space number. Sometimes people are in hotel rooms. They have to know all of these little details in order to help the dispatcher be able to get help to them appropriately and quickly. And practice. With the littles, we practice saying the address. And with the older kids, have them write out the address so they get used to it and it starts to become memorized. You want them to know where exits are when they go places. You want them to also know that when a dispatcher, when they call 911, the dispatcher will be asking them questions, and they're really good at following directions. And the best thing that they can do is be good listeners for the dispatcher. The dispatcher will give them important directions to unlock the door, gather any medications, put away any family pets, look out for the paramedics or the police that come on scene. Ideally, we want to make our children empowered, and doing it in a fun way will drive that point home. Recognizing an emergency is really important because sometimes, again, we assume that our littles know what to do, but they might not understand if somebody is choking, or if somebody maybe cuts their hand at home, or has a condition that they deal with on a daily basis. The main point that we want to drive home is please teach your kids their home address. Make sure you go over it all the time, not just 1 or 2 times. It has to be on a continual basis. They can't be afraid to call 911. They won't get in trouble as long as it's because of an emergency and they're calling for help. They need to be able to unlock a cell phone without a code. Kids are very smart and they can play all the games in the world on their tablets and their devices, but they need to know that whether you have an Android or you have an iPhone or any other kind of phone, that there are ways to call 911 without unlocking it. And there are various ways to do that. You can press the power button, I believe, 3 times. You can actually go swipe up and it'll have a little red emergency call button, and have them go over that with your phone and get comfortable with that. Because when you are in the midst of an emergency, there are adults who forget what to do. There are adults who forget where they're at, what their address is. And being able to go over this over and over and over again will make it muscle memory for these kids. And another important part that I want to address is our police officers. They are first responders too. They are helpers. A lot of times they will get to the scene first. And not many people know that police officers do have first aid training, and they have first aid equipment and supplies in their units. So if you see a police officer and you called for a medical reason, that's okay. They can come, they can help too. And they can help before the paramedics get there. And as soon as the paramedics or the firefighters arrive, then they can step back and allow them to help. So we need to make sure that we are putting forth that police are helpers as well. Ultimately, the reason that I did this was to make sure that if anything happened to my mom while she was taking care of Fabian, he could manage. But it turned out that I'm the one that needed the help. And I can't stress enough how going over simple things like your home address, your phone numbers, and knowing the names of the trusted adults will really be invaluable to them. And that's pretty much it for my side. Again, it's a lot of practice, putting it into practice. Talking with your kids, practicing situational awareness. When I take Fabian out in the car, I ask him, what do you see when we get to a stop sign? What do you see when we get to a stoplight? He sees a McDonald's, or he sees a Sprouts. He sees a playground or a church. He starts asking where he's going. What are the streets that he's on? And that's really, really important for kids to start being aware. A lot of times they're so caught up on their devices that they're not paying attention to anything. We're taking them and dropping them off, and there's no awareness. So we want to basically empower our kids to be able to hold their own in an emergency. Again, role play with your child, make it fun, write it down, put it everywhere that you can. And in the middle of the day, just ask them, what's the address? What's my phone number? And it's practice, practice, practice.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. And one of the things you were talking about is also recognizing what type of emergency is a 911 situation. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think we have to give our kids the knowledge base to know when something's wrong, because there are some households that are dealing with older generations who have certain conditions. So they know that if grandma's blood sugar drops, something's wrong and they have to call 911. But it's something as simple as cutting your hand, or if somebody is choking, they need to be able to know the universal sign for choking. If they're sick, or there's excess of blood, those are the kinds of things you have to address with your kids, so they know it's not just, mommy just has a cold. That's not a reason to call 911. They stubbed their toe. That's not a reason to call 911. you know, the big stuff, not being able to breathe, not being able to, lots of bleeding. Those are the kinds of things that you want to address with the kids. So when and if the situation does come up, they know that it's an emergency and they need to call 911.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that elaborating on those descriptions. Thank you, Kim. That was a really informative presentation, and thank you for sharing your heart and your experience with your own child. And it's just proof that practice is really a vital and key part of making that awareness happen. So thank you so much. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Deanne Noble. She is the communications supervisor for the Whittier Police Department. And in fact, Kim's situation happened in Whittier, and Deanne is also with the Whittier Police Department. So I would like to give her a moment to go ahead and share on the perspective of a police department and how they support and how teaching us how we can equip our children as well. So thank you so much, Deanne.
Well, pretty much, thank you. But Kim, you pretty much nailed it. You gave a lot of good information that I would have given also. I do want to iterate, though, that it is very important to teach your children to give their address. You'll be really surprised. There's a lot of adults that don't even give their complete address, and your apartment number, your hotel room number is part of the address. We have so many times where we go out and an adult gives their address and they fail to give us the apartment number. So that's very, very important, especially when you're going to an emergency situation. The officers and fire department are looking for those apartment numbers. And if they are not given the information, then that delays the response, because then the dispatcher has to then call back and ask for it. And we may not be able to get a hold of the person because they are, you know, we can't reach them for any type of reason. The family member isn't answering because they're in a panic, or the situation is the person has passed out and can't get to the phone again. So it is very, very important to give that apartment number, like Kim said. Calling 911 from a cell phone, it does give your location. However, sometimes it doesn't give the exact location. So like Kim said, it is very important to give the exact address. If they don't know the address, they can give the color of the house if they're able to step out. Something important like that, where the first responder will be able to see that information. We have some cities that have programs that will have, if you're the residents there have some type of oxygen, or if they have ADHD, if they're autistic, there are some programs out there that some cities offer where you can have a sticker outside of your window. So that's when I suggest you make sure that you call your local police department, your local sheriff's department, and see if they offer any type of emergency programs like that. Most of the time it does go to the local police department. Sometimes if you hit a cell tower, it could get directed to the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, just depending on where you're at. So sometimes those dispatchers might not be as familiar with your area that the person's describing. That's why, once again, it is very important to give your address. And let's be honest, sometimes technology just fails. So getting that location on the 911 call sometimes doesn't work so well. I don't know, Kim, you pretty much nailed it all. Calling 911, it does go straight to the police department. It does not go to the fire department. So we may have to transfer you to the fire department, because there are some cities that do dispatch police and fire. But for like my city, the city of Whittier, we only dispatch for the police department. So we triage the situation. We find out if the police department does need to respond, because we do get there most of the time before the actual fire department does arrive. And like Kim said, we are equipped with emergency equipment inside of the police cars as well. So we get there pretty much before them. They start triaging the patient, and then they will go ahead and hand it over to the fire department when they do arrive. So that's pretty much all I have, because Kim, you pretty much gave it all.
And thank you, Deanna. It's affirming that what we're sharing is consistent with
Yes.
what you're offering as well, and what you're telling us, and so that we can be best prepared. So thank you so much for,
Yes, you're
for
welcome.
being here. I'm sure there may be questions after. Oh, did you want to share
Okay.
more?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Next, I'd like to share a video presentation with you, which includes vital information from our fire department. So it's about 7 minutes. I really feel it's important for us to watch this. Just it's a perspective that we need to be able to see, and you're also welcome to share this with your students as well. But I believe that this video is worth watching. So please just give us a minute and we will get it set up.
Fire drills help keep you safe in school, so you know what you need to do in case of a fire. But what if there was a fire where you live? Would you know what to do? My name is Carmen, and I'm going to take you to meet some special friends that will help us learn about fire safety.
Hi, Carmen, how are you?
Hey, Fireman Dan. Dowser.
We're glad you stopped by, Carmen. Are you ready to learn about fire safety?
Uh-huh.
Well, I think Dowser is too. So are you ready to learn some super smart fire safety rules for kids?
Okay.
You know, it's really smart for families to talk about what they would do to get out of a burning house if there was a fire. So, Carmen, did you draw a map of the escape plan with your family?
I did. I drew all of the exits in my house and how to get to them from my room.
Good job, Carmen. You know, smoke from a fire can make it hard to see where things are, so it's important to know the way out of your home. The idea is to get out quickly and safely.
I think that the fastest way out of my house is through the front door.
That's a great plan, Carmen. Now, let's talk about the safety steps you should take in case there's a fire in your home. If you're in a room with the door closed when a fire breaks out, check to see if there's heat or smoke coming in the cracks around the door, which could mean there's a fire on the other side. If you see smoke under the door, don't open the door. Grab some sheets, blankets, or clothing to block the cracks around the door and keep heat and smoke from getting in. Now let's say you don't see smoke under the door. What should you do?
I know this. We learned it at school. If you don't see smoke, you should touch the doorknob. If the door or the doorknob is hot or very warm, don't open the door.
That's right. If the door or doorknob is hot, don't open the door. Now, if the doorknob feels cool and you can't see any smoke around the door, you can open the door very carefully and slowly. When you open the door, if you feel a burst of heat or smoke pours into the room, quickly shut the door and make sure it's really closed. If there's no smoke or heat when you open the door, you can follow your map and go toward your exit route. Okay, let's pretend that the door and doorknob are hot, so you don't want to open it because fire or smoke is blocking your escape route. What do you think you might do first?
Yell for help out my window.
Smart move. If you can't get out fast, yell for help from an open window, or call 911 if you have a phone with you.
I know how to dial 911.
Great, because with those 3 numbers, you can reach the fire station, the police, or an ambulance. If you can't leave through a door that leads outside, talk with your parents about windows. Your parents can teach you how to unlock the windows, open them, and remove the screen if needed. Make sure you only do this in an emergency. Lots of kids are injured because they fall out of windows. Now, let's talk about hiding.
You shouldn't hide.
Right. Even if you're scared, never hide. Firefighters or other adults will be looking for you to help you out safely. The sooner they find you, the sooner you can get out. Now let's pretend we're doing a home fire drill to practice your escape.
Okay.
Let's say that the doorknob and the door are cool, but you see a little smoke. What do you do?
I open the door very slowly to check for fire.
Right. And if you see any smoke in the house, you can grab a piece of clothing or a towel and place it over your mouth so you don't breathe in any smoke. This works even better if you wet the cloth first.
Got it.
Now it's really important to stay low to the ground as you make your way out. Well, do you know why you should stay low?
No.
Well, think about it. When smoke comes out of a chimney, which way does it go?
Up.
Right. Smoke rises, so by staying low means you can crawl under it. You know, smoke can be more dangerous than the flames because smoke is dirty air, and we need clean air to breathe. So stay low and you'll breathe less smoke. Once you're outside, you should have a special meeting place where family members can get together.
I know the perfect place. My favorite tree.
Having a meeting place is important because then everyone shows up in one place and you'll know everyone is safe.
Wait, I forgot my favorite teddy bear.
Once you're out, do not go back inside. Now, it's normal to worry about your favorite toy or a pet, but if there's a fire, you have to leave them behind. Now, you can tell fire rescue workers about any pets left behind and they might be able to help, but the most important thing is that you get out safely. Now, it's great to talk about emergency plans, but it's even better to practice them, like fire drills at your school. Having a fire drill at home gives everyone a chance to see how they would react in a real emergency. See if your family can get out of the house using the escape routes and meet outside within 3 minutes. Your family should practice this drill twice a year. And parents, that's a great time to change the batteries in the smoke alarms. Now, here's a really important question. Do you know what to do if your clothes catch on fire?
I know this, but I'm going to need some help. If your clothes catch on fire, this is what you do. There are 3 easy steps to listen to. They go like this, and they aren't hard to say. Just follow along, and we'll show you the way.
Stop, drop, roll. 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 Stop, drop, roll.
You know, every year, kids of all ages start over 35,000 fires that hurt people, animals, and property. Now, they don't mean to hurt anybody, but fire is dangerous and can get out of control quickly. So don't play with matches, lighters, or other fire, like fireplaces, stoves, or candles. And you can prevent fire in the first place.
And that's the super smartest safety rule of all.
That video, yes, it looks a little childish, but there was a lot of great points on there that I really felt it was important just for us to review it and watch over it. One thing I'd like to highlight is in speaking with a retired firefighter, he had mentioned when you check the door to actually use the back of your hand. Because if you were to use the front of your hand and it were to be hot, that could hinder your hand. If you needed to like crawl out somewhere or grip something, then your hand would be burned or hot or injured. So it's always good because this is a little bit of a thinner skin and you can feel the heat of the door. So I thought that was poignant and I wanted to make sure. And that video did show her kind of like using the palm of her hand to check the door as one of her examples. So that was really important. And also in speaking with our firefighter, he had mentioned some tips for special needs families with special needs. And it could be as imperative as notifying the dispatcher of a family member or child with special needs, because special modifications can be made from the side of the firefighters or our first responders to be mindful and attentive of any of our families with special needs. And that could be if they're sensitive to sound, they can make it so that the fire engines or the sirens don't go off when you're closer to the location of the house, so that it doesn't startle them with it being too loud. They also realize that when they come in to to assess an area, their walkie-talkies may be on and it may be loud and you could hear communication that might disrupt a student who is sensitive to sound. So by notifying the firefighters, even as they come in, to let them know that there are some sensitivities to sound, they can make those modifications. Also, in regards to touch, if a student or a family member is sensitive to touch, when they put a student or a person on a gurney, there are also different types of cloth that they can use. Some of the cloth that they put over a body can be itchy and hard and kind of rough. If they know ahead of time that a person has sensitivity to touch, they can make those modifications in removing that type of sheet and trying something different. So those are really good hints. Also, sensitive to overstimulation. During an emergency, there may be multiple units coming in, different firefighters and paramedics. And so if they know that there is a sensitivity to overstimulation, they may be able to, again, modify the way they approach a family member with special needs in caring for them, as well as being mindful of the family that are around. I thought those were really helpful tips. And again, as Deanne had mentioned, there are some cities that have special stickers that allow the firefighters or first responders to know if there is anyone with any special needs in the home that they can be mindful of. So that's really important. And again, our school, we represent LA and Ventura County. That is a very large area. So we encourage you as family and parents to reach out to your local police department, firefighters, community service workers, to see what services are available in your area. If you have someone with special needs or a family member, or even our elderly as well, those are things that we should be mindful of. Also, you can notify first responders of any medications that the person that they're taking care of may be on. So kind of also how Kim was able to describe, making sure that if there are any medications that the student knows where to find them in order to show the paramedic, or even an adult is able to show what medications, if we have elderly family in the house and they need to be responded to. So those are some of the tips from our firefighters, as well as down here again, can reiterate and say this again, make a practice plan, make sure that you are rehearsing these things, and make sure that your kids feel empowered. I will give you a firsthand experience. We did this when my children were little, and we had our emergency doors and we knew where we were going, and we would do scenarios in which, okay, if there was a fire in the kitchen, where would we exit? Which doors would we exit? Okay, if there was a fire in the bathroom, which doors would we exit? And we practiced those different scenarios. If one of the bedrooms was on fire, what other avenues would we exit? So we did practice this, and one time our battery was running low on our fire alarm, and it went off. And my son right away ran out of his door and he's like, "Where's the fire at? Where's the location? Which door do we exit?" And I was, calming him down at the same time, but I was so proud of him that was his first response. Where's the fire and where is the other exit? And so that is done again through practice and repetition and helping the kids. Yes, he was scared. He was very worried, but at the same time, because he knew he had to look for his parents or look for his sister, he knew exactly how this scenario was gonna run, take its course. So practice was very vital. And so I'm sure that would also help in your situation if an emergency were to occur. Some other resources that we would like to share with you are family emergency plans. There are printable sheets that you can get online versus YouTube and Google. Here are a few that we were able to put on our slides for you as reference. So one is the emergency plan with children and youth with special needs. Those are different things that you might want to consider and have available, and know where medication and stuff are placed in case of an emergency. You may have younger children, and so this middle slide or this middle image is right here that says my phone list. That's just a small, concise way for our little kids to be able to maybe reach for it on our refrigerator, somewhere where they have access to it. should they have to make a 911 phone call and answer questions, then they have this paper to hold on to. As well as when you get into maybe an older age student or a person, then you can use the emergency contacts that has a little bit more details where they're able to share with our first responders and again provide that emergency information in that time. I wanted to share that with you. Also, on this slide, we have safety resources, and these are just small videos. As we perused the things that were available, we felt like these would also be of a resource to our families. And again, reiterating how to create a family action plan or emergency plan. How and when is the appropriate time to call 911? And Kim was able to explain that a little bit more as well, but we have this video to share. There are some non-emergencies, and then there are some when it is an emergency. So helping our students identify which are the emergencies and which are non-emergencies. That's really important. And then a first aid. Sometimes mom or dad may have a boo-boo and we know exactly where to run to find the Band-Aids or find an ice pack. Those kind of things are also just as important for our students. If they see little sister or brother in need, then they can maybe help support in that way. So there are videos right here as resources to help you and to make sure that you have that available for your students. Last but not least, one of our subscriptions that we offer at the Blue Ridge Academy is through BrainPop. And under BrainPop Junior, there are videos, different types of videos on how to handle emergency situations. So please, you have access to it through your Blue Ridge subscriptions. You're welcome to peruse those. You can even actually find them on the search button. If you say emergency, they are safety, under the word safety, you'll be able to find those as well and look at those videos. And there's a lot of different ones that may provide that support for you. As we conclude, let me keep running.
Jesse has been planning for...
Here we go. As we conclude, I just want to thank you for joining us today during this presentation. We felt like this month would be the most appropriate time to share our safety at home presentation. We realize that as summer is ending, even though it doesn't feel like it, as summer is ending, we're going to start making our way into our homes. And this is where some of our emergencies occur. And we want to be able to empower you as parents, empower our students to be knowledgeable and feel confident about helping in emergency situations. We are very grateful for Kim coming and presenting. Deanne, thank you so much. We're going to open it now for a time of question and answers. So if you have questions that you would like to ask any of, once again, our community service or Kim, and if you have any questions even about how she handled that at the end and maybe what she's pursuing as well, you're free to unmute yourself and ask a question. And we'll be happy to support you. So it can be any gamut. Ask a question so that we can be here and find our best way to support you.
I have an additional point I'd like to make really quick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When you are there's a combination of families that make up a family. And many times we have children who reside in two households, or they reside at grandma and grandpa's house. It's important that they know the addresses to both households, that they know the city where both households are, because sometimes dad might live in one city and mom might live in another city. It's important to know the important addresses. That's a big thing because we have a lot of multi-generational families. And sometimes kids don't just go to one address. And that goes back to the situational awareness, knowing where you're at, teaching the kids, getting them comfortable with knowing where they're at. They'll be able to say, oh, we're going to grandma's house in Lancaster, or we're going to, Auntie Joanne's house, in Los Angeles. And that will start to solidify these locations, so when they do need to call 911, they know where they're at. And another thing to put out to your kids is starting to read the street signs where they're at, recognizing what the street signs look like in case they're in an accident outside of the home and they do need to call 911. They can relay the information to the dispatcher, so the dispatcher can get the help to them. It's not just, well, I see a McDonald's. Can you tell me the name of the street? For the kids that can't read that well, or for kids that have impairments, if they can see the letters, can you tell me the order of the letters that are on the sign? And the dispatcher can kind of decipher it that way. And going back to what Anna said about the list of phone numbers, if in the chaos of an emergency and your child is calling 911 and they're not able to remember, or they don't even remember where the paper is, getting a piece of mail, looking at a piece of mail, and they can read off the address to the dispatcher is a really helpful tool. So just getting them comfortable with knowing what the address looks like in print is also very helpful.
Thank you. That also reminded me, I'll Carrie, you're next. One thing reminded me, I did speak with another dispatcher and she said, also nowadays, if it is a child, they, and most of the time they have cell phones, like it's, if they know that they have a mobile phone and they're able to kind of maneuver around, they will ask them to go outside and describe the car and give them the letters on the license plate, because the license plate with the is registered with the DMV, and they're able to get a more accurate address from that as well. So those little tricks, our dispatchers are learning every day, new ways to help our students and to make sure that they can identify as best as they can where they're at. Go ahead, Carrie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, really quickly. When my children were little, we still had landlines, and I would keep a list of emergency contacts there, but everybody has a cell phone now. So another good idea is maybe on your refrigerator, and to keep your address written down, because sometimes when someone's frightened, they forget things. But emergency contacts, so that the kids know where to go. So it's always there if they forget. That's all.
Yes, that's great. I still have mine, and my kids are now, 19 and 16, and I still have that same emergency contact on my refrigerator, and it's there, and it's always, they know where it's at, but it's never too late. Let's just say, because when emergency happens, sometimes we get disoriented, and it happens. Adults can get disoriented and not know. So having that available for the entire family to be able to see is really important. Any other questions or comments? You're welcome to share an experience that you may have had with your student or with your family member. We're open to hearing those as well.
Can I ask one more question? This is actually for Deanne. Maybe she can answer a little bit better. What kind of questions does the dispatcher ask when you call 911? So kids kind of have an idea, because there are some adults that they call 911 and they expect you just call and the help comes and it appears, and they're not really receptive to answering questions, and they get very frustrated, not understanding that in order for you to send the help, you need to ask the questions. Can you go over what kind of questions the dispatchers ask?
Yes. So for the police department, for us, we of course, first of all, we ask if it's a life or death emergency. If they need police or paramedics. If they need paramedics, then we ask them if the person is awake and breathing, because then that's going to determine whether or not the officer is going to respond. If it's, oh no, they're breathing, I think they broke their arm, we will go ahead and transfer it over to the fire department, and then they will go ahead and handle it from there. If it's, oh, my grandma's not breathing, she's turning blue, then we will go ahead and stay on the line with them, get their name, phone number, address, and then transfer it over to the fire department. So that way the police officer can go ahead and start responding there before the fire department's even finished taking their information. We always ask what the address is first. After we determine whether or not it's a life or death emergency, who has to respond, and then we ask them their address, their phone number, their name. And then just depending on what the situation is, then we go ahead and venture off and figure out what other type of questions to answer. So it's really depends on what type of situation they're calling 911 for. But it's mainly where they're at, what the emergency is, who's involved in the emergency, and if they're at that location, because sometimes they will receive a call from, mom, and she's in a different city, and they're on the phone with mom, and mom is having, some type of medical emergency, and they're not even with them. So that's another thing also, whether or not they are actually with the person that needs the help. That's pretty much it. So it really just depends on what type of situation they're in.
Thank you. That was great. You are so right. There are people who call from different locations. So thank you for sharing
And
that.
another thing also is we are coming up, you can dial 911 from your computer. So sometimes we have a college here in the city, so their computer is registered back in Chicago where mom and dad are, but they're going to college here in Whittier. The 911 could be routed to Chicago sometimes because the phone number is actually in Chicago. So that's another thing to make sure that what you're calling on is giving the correct address.
That is new to me. That is so, I did not know that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to keep up with the technology that's going on and how that changes things. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments that anyone would like to make? Well, definitely we want to thank you for joining this presentation. Deanne, thank you for coming and sharing and being representing the Whittier Police Communications and Police Department. Kim, thank you for sharing your story and your son. We got to see him in the early part, but he's certainly growing up, and he's going to continue to learn so many new things. So thank you for sharing that story with us. And again, thank you for attending. This will be recorded. It has been recorded, and it will be shared on our Blue Ridge Academy site, as well as our Facebook group and our Blue Ridge Bulletin. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to look at the slide and send us an email, seeing how we can support you or how we can be a resource to you, any of our families. That's what we are here to do. So thank you so much. We appreciate you being here today. We wish you and your family a safe holidays, safe fall and winter. We wish you the best, and may you continue to be empowered and continue to instruct your kids to be safe at home. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.